A very happy Friday morning to all of our listeners in DCU and beyond. This is DCU FM's In Conversation With, coming to you live from the Glasnevin campus. My name is Greg Mulhall. I'm joined in the studio today by my lovely co-hosts Colin McDonnell.
Hey Greg.
Gavin Kelly.
Hi lads.
I'm also privileged to welcome to the studio today, I haven't told him this yet, but my own childhood hero. In his first year with the Laois senior setup under the mentorship of one Mick O'Dwyer in 2003, he scored a crucial goal in the Leinster final as Laois lifted the Delaney Cup for the first time since 1946. He would contest the next two finals, losing to Westmeath by 2 points after a replay and losing to Dublin by a point in 2005, as well as a further loss to the Dubs in the 2007 decider. That same year he was crowned the Laois Senior Football Championship winner with his club, Arlis Kilcrews, their first and only title. He went on to contest a further 3 Laois Senior Football Championships, represent his country in the international rules in 2 series, represent Leinster in 3 Railway Cups, and receive an All-Star nomination. He's now entering into his 16th season with the Laois Senior Football team, and he just so happens to be our own Director of Alumni Relations here at our beloved DCU. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ross Munnelly.
Thank you very much.
Clap in order.
Ross, welcome to the show. Thanks very much for coming in today.
No problem. Thank you for such a good build-up there.
Yeah, you know...
unfortunately, not enough winners' medals in all of that you read out, but...
they might have teetered off in the last couple of years, maybe.
But thanks nonetheless.
Ross, what were your thoughts when I approached you there about a week and a half ago asking you to come on the show?
Obviously enough, I said yes straight away, because I would always help out our students, and especially for DCUFM and so on, because it's such an important part of building current students who go out and leave DCU as graduates and have gone on to become who do go on to become very successful. For example, in the last couple of weeks we had an alumni lunch with Eamon Donoghue, who's now with the Irish Times, Owen Sheehan, Tommy Mooney, who are with News Talk, and Ben Egan, who's with AIR. So people who have sat in those chairs that you're sitting in now, getting the practical experience through DCU FM. DCU helps to build that confidence and character, and you go on and become successful alumni, and that's what the university is all about, and our alumni community continues long after you guys finish your student days.
Yeah, I mean, the opportunity afforded to us here at DCU FM is fantastic.
Yeah,
so before we get into the bones of the interview, we're going to do a short quick fire quiz to get to know you just a little bit more. A few light-hearted questions. I think Greg has them in front of him there.
So Ross, just to start off, there's completely random little tidbits, just try and get to know Ross Munnelly.
Go for it.
Okay, so firstly, tea or coffee, Ross?
Coffee,
right. Any particular coffee? What's your coffee of choice?
Americano.
Right, nice and simple. Okay. What did you want to be when you were a kid?
It's just a funny one, because on the first day I went into Knockbeg, or what they ask you, they do the profiles.
Mrs. Foley, of course.
Yeah, for the Knockbeg College annual, and you pen pictures for all the first years. Mine was at the time to become a secondary school teacher, to captain Laois, and to win a Leinster championship.
So I think you ticked all those boxes.
And I've achieved all of those.
Very good. So Ross, 3 guests, living or dead, that you'd invite to a dinner party.
Roy Keane.
Very good answer.
Yeah.
Alex Ferguson.
I can see where this is
where
going.
this is going, yeah.
And Jose.
Those are 3 strong characters.
What did you make of the Champions League the other night?
I was at it.
Right.
Yeah. I'm going over again tomorrow now for the Brighton game. It was very disappointing. Look, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. That's Jose's approach to big games. He tries to make it as makes the game as, I suppose, really non-eventful for both sides, and hope that they live off United nicking a goal. And unfortunately it didn't work. They had their chance in the first half through Fellaini. He missed it, and Sevilla were worthy winners in the end, so no complaints, but very, very, very disappointed.
Alright, we'll say nothing less.
Moving on.
Maybe we won't come back to the soccer topic.
Back to the quiz.
Who would you like to play you in a Hollywood blockbuster?
Gary Walsh.
I can imagine Gary on a movie set now. Last song you listened to?
Good question. Sit Down.
Fair. Okay. And name a song that you hate.
To be honest, you're hitting me hard here, lads. I'm not the biggest music fan. You'll never walk alone. You have to get a dig at the Liverpool supporters. One of them sitting in front of me here.
Yeah. What's your reaction now?
Sure. We'll keep it professional for now.
Your
ideal weekend, Ross?
Ideal weekend, probably something similar to this weekend. I'm heading over to the match on Saturday. We'll get tomorrow. There'll be loads of sport. I'll catch the rugby game. Go to see Man United. Maybe head out after for an hour into town. But I'm flying home early Sunday morning for training. So
a lot of travelling for you the last week or two. So
yeah, but listen, you do it because you enjoy it. I'm a season ticket holder for Man United, so I'm over and back quite regularly. I enjoy it. It's a nice release. It's a good escape as well. You know, because things are very, very busy in work and training and so on. So my ideal weekend is probably over and back to Old Trafford on the Saturday and back into training on Sunday morning.
Very good. And when you went to the game midweek, did you come back from Ruislip at the weekend?
Yes.
You came back and then you went again?
Exactly, yeah. So
you're liking the airport, so...
Liking the airports at the minute. But yeah, because I had a busy day in work on Monday and Tuesday before I went. So clocking up the air miles. But listen, it's grand. It's only a 35-minute flight to Manchester, so it takes me longer to get to Laois.
Well, it can do, depending on what the traffic's like on the M50 on a given day. With the would you rather win the Euro Millions or lift Sam with Laois?
Lift Sam with Laois.
There wasn't even a hesitation there, was it?
Not at all.
That's what I like to hear. And then finally, your favourite grounds to play in?
Favourite grounds? I'm going to say,
and, whatever.
I'm going to say the Subiaco Oval in Perth.
Right. Okay, and that was 2013?
2014. Yeah, so I was on the tour in 2005, but I was injured for the first game.
Yeah.
But it's from that moment that I just felt this place is incredible. It's an old style stadium in Perth. It has a huge history associated with it, and it took me until 2014 to get to actually play on it. So that is my favourite ground.
And so it was obviously one off the bucket list for yourself. Would you compare it to a county ground in terms of atmosphere?
Yeah, I'm going to go international rules again on this one. It's 2013 where we played Australia in Cavan.
Right.
That was a really enjoyable evening, really good atmosphere.
Park, was it?
Yeah.
I'm from Cavan myself, yeah.
Yeah, so you know yourself when there's a crowd in there, and even just coming through the town, it gets so congested and built up. There's a real good atmosphere and environment.
It always seems to be when there's a big game on, yeah.
Personally, I prefer the kind of smaller venues. Some of the best games that we had with Laois would have been up in Carrick and Shannon. So we played Leitrim there in the qualifiers, and we played Donegal in the qualifiers as well. So I like the smaller grounds where there's a brilliant atmosphere and you feel like everything is in on top of you, and you feel that you can almost hear the crowd every time something happens and so on. So that's, for me, that's what sport is about. That real, high energetic, big, real thick atmosphere, and you enjoy it.
Yeah,
you don't have that many other sports where if you shout something at a player, he more than likely will hear it.
There's a good chance he'll hear it. Yeah,
it is quite well, I suppose in the lower leagues of soccer and smaller leagues in sport, you might get it, but at GAA, even at high level championship games, you might hear an old fella in the third front row shouting abuse at you or something like that.
Yeah, and in the bigger games, say in Croke Park, where you have a full capacity, you won't hear the individual stuff, but you will hear maybe 10 minutes to go when if you've been a couple of points down and you get back within one, or if you've been a couple of points up and the opposition gets back within one, the whole intensity and the atmosphere in the stadium after a score, just as the kick out is about to happen, the whole place just lifts, and then it's you're on the home stretch.
So Ross, moving on from our quickfire round, we're going to talk a little bit about your early years, so circa 2003, but just before we touch on that, Ross, yourself and I are actually both Knockbeg alumni as well.
Brilliant.
So I seen that Johnny Bean, I'm sure you had Johnny back in your day, of course.
I did.
He's retiring, and I see there's a bit of a do upcoming, isn't there?
Yeah, there is one. Yeah.
Will you be attending yourself?
If I can, it depends on training. So I saw some of the notices about it, but to be honest with you, for in season, can you just keep the focus on training with Laois, because it's very intense, and I live in Dublin as well.
Okay.
I have a very busy job here. I'm trying to recruit and build an office. It's very time consuming at the moment. So where possible, I try and go to things like that. But
obviously, there's just so many commitments you can't make.
You have to be selfish with your time as well. Yeah. But what a phenomenal teacher!
Oh, like this man that we're speaking of, Johnny Bean. He actually went to Knockbeg himself as a student. He went off. He's had quite a storied and travelled life. He has some fantastic stories. He worked on building sites in Germany and across Europe, and he fell off his motorcycle and he shattered his leg in, I think, numerous places, and he actually continued to do his teaching placement in the school on the crutches. Jeez. And he ended up falling, having to get the leg reset again and everything, basically starting again, and he's taught in Knockbeg since. So it was his first job out of college in his teaching capacity, and he's been there since. So just a little shout out to Mr. John Bean.
Yeah, great guy, one of the best.
Great guy. So Ross, you actually missed out on Knockbeg's Hogan Cup success.
Yes, I was probably between two teams there. You had a generation who were quite good when I was in maybe first, second year, and then after I left, you had the generation that won the Hogan Cup. My brother was in goals on that team, and that kind of mirrored the underage in Laois as well, because I was between those successful groups of minors that went on to win All Ireland. So so I missed out on them, but still enjoyed them, hugely enjoyed them as Knockbeg fans and as a Laois supporter.
Great. And so just moving into 2003, you'd obviously, as you just said, you were one of the few minor teams in Laois during that era that I suppose weren't quite as successful as, say, the teams in 96.
Not successful at all. No, yeah. we got to, I think Westmeath beat us after a replay in a Leinster semi-final. They did go on to win the Leinster Championship that year, but yeah, we didn't. I suppose it's down to a couple of reasons. One, our performances weren't good enough to win, and it was Laois had been on a crest of a wave in the minor setups, but this particular bunch of players weren't up to that particular standard, and I include myself in that as well. The performances just weren't good enough, and we didn't advance on that was our own fault.
And then in 2003, obviously, Mick O'Dwyer took over the helm for the Laois senior footballers, and you were drafted in. I believe I've heard a story that the first league game he pulled you from an under-21 training session and asked you to sit on the bench for the day, and you were given some high number, 32 or 3 of course, and I think you were thrown on for the last 20 minutes or such.
Yeah, that's right. It was. I could be wrong on this.
From Mana,
in 2003, I think the leagues might have even started before Christmas back then.
Okay.
Or certainly I wasn't involved in the earlier league games. I only got drafted in for the down game, which would have been halfway through the league. So I remember going to those first couple of league games. Fermanagh was one of them, and I hadn't been involved, and it was some of the lads from the under-21 team were involved. I think Barry Brennan is one particular player who was, and so playing for the seniors was way off on the horizon in terms of where I was thinking. And then I think it would have been around March, the down league game was coming up, and Miko just bumped into me at the bottom of the stand the day before. I think we'd been training with under-21s, and just said, are you free tomorrow? And I said, yeah, I'm not doing anything. And he said, come on in and sure, sit on the bench. So that's what I did. I went in, no expectations of playing. I had trained the day before fully, and with about 20 minutes to go, he gave me the word came through that I was to warm up, and I was looking around thinking, what this? And so even at that I thought, okay, maybe everyone has to go down and warm up. So literally 30 seconds later I was tracksuit off and ready to go in.
Right. And how was that feeling? You said one of the things you wanted to captain Laois on your goals back when you were a kid was you wanted to captain Laois. You wanted to win the Leinster final. You got to pull on your Laois jersey. Was there at senior level? How was that feeling?
Yeah, I didn't really. To be honest with you, don't think about that because it happened so quick. I remember it so vividly. There was a break in play. We had got a free. Aidan Fennelly was standing over the ball, probably about 50 yards out, and I was put on, so went straight in, and referee blew the whistle, start the game again. I turned, showed for the ball, so he gave me probably about a 25-30 yard kick pass, got the ball in my hand and just shot straight away, hit the post and dropped over the bar. And that was the start of it, you know. So
that was your nerve settled.
Yeah, and it was like that, and when I think back on it now, it was just instinct. You're thrown in rather than having time to think about anything else. It was get on the ball and shoot, and to be fair, probably that's the way Miko treated a lot of young players. He just threw you in and said, go on, get on with it.
And what was the transition like going from the younger setups like the minor and the under 21 into the senior team for the first time?
Oh, it was completely different because you're playing at that stage. You're playing with people that were you. For me, I was in a dressing room with people who were my role models, and it was the same. The 2005 when I was on the international rules, I was sitting in a dressing room with players that maybe, what was I, 20 at the time, I was 23 then, maybe a couple of years, or when I was 15, 16, I was probably kicking ball in the back garden with my brothers, you know, pretending to be Porridge Ice or people like that who were the Gooch, who were top players. So it's amazing how quick that evolves, that you go from, you know, seeing these people as role models to actually being comfortable in their presence and thinking, well, actually when it comes to it and you're on a team, that you have just as much to offer. You know, and certainly in the Laois dressing room, the lads were brilliant. They made me feel at home straight away, and I'm guessing, well, I certainly would have learned stuff from those players straight away, but I'm guessing they would have learned things from me as well, because I would be one of the first to train, and particularly back then I was always the first out. And I was the last leaving. Fergal Byrne, who was obviously our all-star goalkeeper, we stayed back religiously every single night after training for competition. So shots, non-stop practicing. And so I think when you get over that bit of where you're talking away, when you get over that bit where you're now playing with role models and so on, you start feel comfortable in a group, and you start realising what you have to contribute, and all of a sudden it gets very serious because there's big games coming, and you have to do your job when you're out in the field. So the transition, you would think a lot more would go through your head, but
it moves so fast.
Moves so fast, and as I said, you're not going to be kept there unless you're doing your job and unless you're performing. So it evolves very, very, very quickly.
And especially in 2003 under Miko, there was the hype around the county approaching that Leinster final year, and you know, the whole county, it was like nothing they'd seen before. You know, how was it trying to deal with pressure like that at such a young age?
That was fine, to be honest. That was fine. I was in second year in Maynooth at the time, and I failed my economics. I was in an arts degree in economics and geography, and I failed economics that year simply because of all the time. Remember when in 2003 there was no motorway.
Of course.
So when I was heading down the train and I had to go through Monasterevin,
the old Dublin road,
Kildare Town, Monasterevin, Ballybrittis, in that way, and I used to leave, and because of the excitement and being involved, I was leaving extra early and neglecting my studies. But that's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned in life to date about time management
and balance
through failing that exam. That I had to repeat the year, and that really taught me that actually going forward, if I want to balance my academics and play at a high level sport, I have to get smarter, and I have to be more organised and more ruthless with my time. And thankfully I haven't failed an exam since.
That's very good. And just on that, is that something that you would have passed on to any of the younger players? Like for Stephen Atroyd, for instance, you actually coached him to a Freshers All-Ireland here in DCU.
Yeah.
He's now gone on to be the Laois senior football captain at 24, and he was captain last year. Is there anything that you would have passed on to Stephen?
Yeah, well, our approach with the freshers teams, and we had them for 6 years, was that every year a group came through. Our job wasn't necessarily to win the All-Ireland or to win leagues with them, even though that was nice.
Yeah.
It was to develop really good DCU people who would, and success for us was the transition of a large group of players onto Sigerson. And to do that, our values for the team were about earning everything you get. So in terms of the gear that the lads got, each one of our freshers teams raised €100 each through first goal scorer cards. Would have been for one of the soccer internationals. So everyone would bring back €100 and they'd get their gear. If we lost the football at a game, we'd collect €2 each from everyone, including the management, and we'd buy a football to replace it.
Yeah.
So we were building a culture on this was something that was ours. We were going to take it forward. It was about being the best DCU person that you could be, and obviously a huge part of that was passing your exams, because you obviously want to progress. Your career was hugely important, and we used to bring players back in January for a training camp, but not really so that they would train. We used to train for an hour a day, but it was to get lads back on campus studying and preparing for the exams. And I think for all the players that would have gone through freshers, and the likes of Stevie who's gone on to captain Laois, she was also another really, really, really nice moment, was coaching Kieran Byrne and then playing international rules with him the year later, and we shared a room and all that kind of stuff. So we were roommates. So I think all of those really good characters would tell you that we wanted them to be DCU people that were able to balance their academics and their sporting goals. And I think now that I'm working in alumni, hopefully that's the kind of values that we can promote and that we can establish among your cohort of students. One of our big objectives is that we embed the concept of alumni relations in the student body, so that you realise, even through something like today, well, actually the alumni community are here to help, so that when you leave DCU you realise, well, this is a lifelong partnership and DCU will always be here for me. So in any way that we can assist, even after you graduate, that you stay in touch with the university. And that's that really in essence is what alumni relations is about. It's keeping people in contact, and keeping that affinity with the university long after you leave.
And what would you say, I mean, you're talking about you passing on advice onto the younger generation, what would you say is the best piece of advice you've received through your footballing career or academic career?
Yeah, a couple of them. The first piece of advice, I probably, if I to target three, it would be Larry Wall from my club, because when I was younger in primary school and in Knockbeg, he used to, every single game, club game in Laois or Laois County games, he used to call up to the house, pick me up and bring me to the games. Never had to worry about paying into a match or anything like that. And he used to always say, if you want to be a good footballer, watch football and see what the top players are doing. So he had a massive influence on.
Is there anyone in particular that maybe you styled yourself on, particularly when you were younger?
To be honest, I don't think so. Maybe more so lads from my club.
Okay, so Chris Conway was obviously only a couple of years older than you. He had won in '96 with the minors and stuff. Would he have been a figure for you?
Yeah, Chris would have been, of course. His brother Padge would have been was a big influence as well. Other players in the club that maybe weren't as talented but never missed a session.
Right.
Older members of the team that kept themselves in really, really good shape, and so people, I would look at different characters and people and think, actually there's something that I can learn from. The second person on that journey is my own dad, who isn't steeped in GAA tradition. He didn't play a huge amount himself, but I remember one at one point when I was playing and coming home from games, and he used to always say to me, "What you didn't do today." And at one stage I said to him, "How come you always say that? How come you never tell me anything I did do?" And he said, "Well, sure, you're never going to get better if I tell you those stuff."
Exactly.
And that was an important moment for me to think, well, actually, yeah, you always have to look at what you're not doing. And then, of course, Mikko has always said that life is a mirror image. What you see in the mirror and what you do is reflected back at you. And that was his way of saying the more that you practice and the more that you do, and the better that you'll become. It doesn't guarantee success, but it does guarantee that you're in the best place possible to put in a performance. And he often told the story about how he used to bring the Bomber Liston to the pitch in Waterville every single evening to kick. He also would have mentioned Maurice Fitzgerald, who used to kick 100 balls every evening and things like that. And that stuff resonates with you. And I think Brian McClare was I picked up an article from him recently, and he was obviously he's a Man United legend, but he spent I think 10 years or 13 years over the academy in United, and he always said that if the players can get through the stage where they're introduced to drink, going out, meeting girls and so on, if the player can remain focused on achieving their sporting goals and take all of those other things on board, then you'll have a really good chance of
I think a lot of that now, they have all those things now. They have social media and the hype they can get from that. If you have 1,000 followers on Instagram or on Twitter or something like that, your head can kind of get to it. You can kind of become a bit arrogant or something like that. How do you think you can keep young players level-headed?
Yeah, it's a hard one, because you're talking. I'm now in a situation where I'm sitting in the Laois dressing room and an 18-year-old is sitting beside me.
Yeah.
So I'm 35, he's 18. There's a huge there's a generation gap almost between us, and there's things that I don't understand that he obviously is living through because social media and so on. Like, I'm going back to a stage where before those big games in Croke Park, I was so focused on playing for Laois, I turned off my mobile phone when I got to training on the Thursday night. It was our last training session before the game. When I got to training on the Thursday night, just before I went into the changing rooms, I'd turn off my mobile phone and I wouldn't turn it back on again until Sunday after the game.
Right.
And that was how I kept my focus. And
is that something that you can still do now, I suppose, in an age where we're more dependent on our mobile phones for work and such, especially for yourself?
Yeah, well, there's not the same volume of messaging and good luck and things like that, because Laois aren't in a position at the moment where you're competing in those games when playing in front of a packed house in Croke Park was realistic every year. Part of you evolves with that as well, because social media is everywhere now. To be honest with you, I skirt around the edges of it. Very basic on Facebook. I only set up Facebook because teams started using pages and stuff like that. I use Twitter a little bit because of work and so on. So I haven't joined the Instagram family yet. People are telling me to go on it and so on, but I suppose generating a huge amount of followers and things like that, it's not important to me. It's but look, at everyone is different.
Yeah.
And
is it something that you're glad that you grew up without the influence of, especially in your younger career or even just your younger life?
I wouldn't say I'm glad not to have, because I've never experienced it, so I don't know.
Okay.
But certainly my approach at the time was, during coming up to big games and so on, was keep the head down and just concentrate on what I was doing. So it's very hard. That's a really hard question.
You might have heard a little bit more about the bleach blonde hair if there was social media back then.
What do you mean?
the old light head back on you back in the day.
Oh yeah, well,
bit more about it.
Mine was natural. It was never bleaching.
Wasn't like MJ Tierney and the lads going around the minor teams that came after.
No. Definitely, I'd be more under the radar. I suppose the flashiest I ever got was wearing all the coloured boots.
Oh, sure, you had a sponsor with Puma. I think
Puma,
it was.
yeah. So I was on a really good gig with Puma at the time, and there obviously was so much free gear, and they used to send me down the boots and say, "Where are these?" And they were white and yellow and green and blue.
Ever a comment from Miko on your?
No, because I suppose all the lads knew at the time as well that I was getting you on a retainer as well, and that helped pay for accommodation in college, and so it was really grateful to. It was Horizon Sports Management at the time for the deal, because that helped me get through college and so on. So, but that was probably the flashiest I was over the years. Since that finished, I went back to wearing black boots, and I'm just happy and I'll always say to players, and when I'm doing interviews as well, the game has evolved so much, but the one thing that is still will never change is you have to be really good at your basic skills, and you have to perform when it comes to game day. And all the supports and all the additional add-ons that assist you and benefit you in terms of nutrition and your body fat counts and the S&C and the mobility, and it's important that you remain focused on the execution of the basic skills, because they will never change in the game. And the most important thing is the performance when you go out to play, because I think, and I would have experienced this when I was coaching players, that sometimes players can get so caught up on, I have to eat this, and I have to get to the pool, and I have to get on the foam roller, and so on and so on and so on. That I always say, make sure that's brilliant and it helps, and get yourself into the best possible position you need to be in before the game, and get yourself into a routine. But remember, just because you do that doesn't mean I've played well at the weekend. You have to go out and perform and win your battle, your individual battle, and contribute to the team winning the overall battle at the weekend.
And where do you see that going with the game in the future? Do you think there's going to be an even more of an emphasis put on nutrition and fitness rather than the fundamentals of football?
No, I don't think so. And I remember doing a launch, I can't remember what it was for. It was in the Shelbourne Hotel a couple of years ago, and some of the journalists that were there was obviously it was a breakfast type event, and some of the journalists, I might have been 30 or 31 at the time, and they were asking, do you think the addition of S&C and the training regimes and so on will shorten people's careers? And I said at the time, no, personally I think it'll help me extend mine, because if you do the prehab and if you follow the S&C advice and you do those, you're very diligent about what you do, then in theory it should mean that you're more flexible, you're more nimble, and you're able, your ability to play at the highest level for longer, it should equate to that. So for me, and I'm not talking in general terms, because everybody's different and everybody picks up different injuries and feels differently about it, but for me, all of those different add-ons have helped me play for longer. But and I don't want to sound contradictory, but at the same time, nothing is more important than your performance at the weekend. So I wouldn't get obsessed on having to do all of these different things, but I do what I feel gets me in the best position to play, knowing that the performance at the weekend is the most important thing.
And Ross, just on that, like, it's a remarkable feat, and I hope my statistics are right on this. You have played your 69th championship appearance when Laois bowed out to Clare in the qualifiers, of course.
That's right.
So Wexford will be your 70th championship appearance when that comes up this year.
Hopefully.
But just on that, like, consecutive championship appearance, like, for someone who has played, you're in your 35th year, you'll be 36 this year, I believe. You've managed to stay injury free for such a long period of time. Is there anything you owe a bit to for that?
Yeah, I suppose I probably have good genes to a certain degree, insofar as I up to this point I haven't got many really bad injuries. Obviously, down through the years, some brilliant physios with Laois. I also spend a good bit of time out in Holt Physiotherapy Clinic and with John Murphy over in Blackrock in the Carysford Clinic to stay on top of all my injuries and so on. And say those kind of people would have got me through some tight moments coming up to games where things mightn't have been right and so on. But for me, it's always been about making sure that I've been available for championship and available to represent Laois. So without jinxing myself, hopefully that'll continue this summer. And look, it's nice to look back and say I've played in every single one of those games. All these things come to an end, but it's more important that Laois win those games.
Yeah.
So if I don't get to play against Wexford and that run is broken, but we win,
you'll still be happy.
I'll still be happy.
You'll still be happy. Well, thanks very much for that bit about your early career, Ross. We're gonna move on a bit, and we're going to look at both your academic and your career now. Gavin has a couple of questions prepared.
Well, I have a couple of questions, Ross, and I'm just wondering, you've had a quite illustrious career here in DCU, so just wondering, out of all the positions you've held, career advisor, head of sports, and now alumni relations, what do you think has been the most rewarding but also challenging at the same time?
I think probably, well, I've been really lucky because I worked in student recruitment, and this is a long way of answering your question. I worked in student recruitment for so when I finished my undergrad degree in Maynooth, I went and I taught economics and geography in a secondary school.
Yeah.
And after a year of doing that, I applied for a job here in the university, and I got working in the student recruitment office and stayed in that role for 6 years. And that role was promoting the university, promoting education in secondary schools, advising prospective students on what was really good about the university and why you should study at DCU, organising the open days, higher options, campus tours. It was really enjoyable. About 4 years into that role, I decided, okay, I'm not going to go back teaching, but I do want to stay in education because I really enjoy the third level environment. So I decided to do my Masters in Guidance and Counselling.
Right.
So after completing that, I applied for a job and got one in the career service as a careers advisor. So that was helping students, I suppose, in terms of their job hunting strategies and figuring out where they wanted to go next. After 2 years there, I was appointed head of sports development, which involved increasing participation at all levels in all sports, supporting elite athletes, developing student clubs, sports clubs, so even adding to the 45 that we already had, so providing more opportunities for students, and then developing student leaders through sport. And after doing 2 years in that role, I was appointed Director of Alumni Relations here in the university. So I've gone from bringing students into the university, supporting them through careers and sports development in their personal and professional development, and now I'm tasked with keeping in touch and providing engagement opportunities for those students as they exit the university. So I'm really pleased to say that the job that will be the most rewarding and the most difficult and the most enjoyable is the one that I'm currently in, because it really is a greenfield site for the university.
It's a new role that you created yourself, essentially, through your work and your build up to it.
Well, the university has always had an alumni function, and that used to be connected with the fundraising element through the DC Educational Trust. But 2013, 2014, the university decided to split fundraising and alumni relations, which some people will call friend raising. Okay. So they appointed an interim director of alumni to get that set up, develop a strategy, and to obviously organise a budget and so on. and last July they were recruiting and they wanted to appoint somebody to actually roll out engagement activities. So they deemed me the best person for the job in July. So it's something that the university has always done, but I hope to bring a unique approach to it, given all of the experience that I have of the university. And I think there's something very special about being a DCU graduate, and it's a help for me to be coming from the inside to help actually engage with those graduates, and to put together an engagement platform every year that's going to bring people back in contact with the university. And the really enjoyable bit for me is that when I contact graduates, it's non-transactional. So I'm not asking them to support the university or to give back in terms of funding, because we have the Education Trust for that. It's purely about engaging with DCU, and so far our graduates are really, really, really enjoying it.
Responding to it as well?
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. So we've numerous pillars that we're connecting with graduates on, and lots of different types. So we obviously have an academic pillar, so through the faculties and the schools, through guest lectures and so on. We have professional, so we have networking opportunities for particular schools of graduates and class years and so on. We have sporting events that we bring graduates back in contact with each other through. So, for example, our All Ireland final football brunch, that was a magnificent event because we had it on the St. Pat's campus. There was over 140 people there. We had graduates of St. Pat's, Mater Dei, and the old DCU previous to incorporation. We had parents of graduates who were playing in the All Ireland final. So we had staff members. So it was a fantastic opportunity for people to come back and get in touch. We connecting through arts and culture. We're connecting through the Women in Leadership program as well. So loads and loads of areas. And what's one of our most important this year is through the student experience, because we want current students to know that we're there as a resource, and that continues after you finish. So the Clubs and Society Awards are on at the end of the month, and this year, for the first time ever, there is an alumni category in those awards. So we offered funding for clubs and societies. They could pitch for funding for different events that they were running that would engage graduates. Mm-hmm. So we have 2 awards on the back of that. One for the Best Club or Society Award that engaged graduates, and we have the second one is the biggest contribution by a graduate to a club or society over the course of the academic year.
Right.
And it's safe to say now that you're pretty well accustomed to DCU. You've been here for a while now. So what would you say sets DCU apart? What makes it unique as a university, and why do you love it so much?
I think we change very quickly, and we have a huge commitment to innovation and creativity, and we instill those skills in people that when they leave the university they'll use them right throughout their career. But because when they're in DCU they have such a fantastic personal and professional experience, they hold DCU in a really, for the majority, I think people hold DCU in very, very, very high regard, and a significant piece of people's lives is spent here with the university. And my job now is to make sure that we continue to offer the opportunities for people to stay connected and keep that feeling strong from their experience. And I think when you walk through campus in Glasnevin and on St. Patrick's and All Hallows, there's a real community feel that maybe you wouldn't get in a much larger university. And that is something that now that we've gone through incorporation that we really want to keep, and we really want students to value, because certainly staff members have an open door policy. you have that opportunity to connect with staff, students, alumni on a regular basis, and people really value bumping into fellow DCU people right across the world. Our alumni reach is not just domestically, we have international chapters in major cities all around the world, and it is something special, I think, for people to say I'm a DCU graduate.
Yeah.
Right, so before we round off, we're going to bring you back to football a little bit. Like we mentioned at the top of the show, you're heading into season number 16. What kind of drives you and motivates you at this stage of your career?
I think for me it's about competing at the highest level, and always, whether I'm in training or I'm playing a game, I want to beat whoever it is that I'm marking in that particular competition. And I think for me, it's, even though people say you're training hard, it's a lot of commitment and so on, I find that energizes me. And some days you win those individual battles, some days you don't. And it's just about keeping you at the very highest level. For me, it's about staying at the highest level for as long as possible. And I've always said, for as long as Laois want me to contribute, I'm more than happy to do that. And I still feel that I have a huge amount to offer, and I am enjoying the opportunity to see so many really good players coming through in Laois, and if I can offer them a little bit of advice along the way out on the training field or in the dressing room and help them become better players or prepare in a better way. So I think it's to answer your question, it's about that challenge and about staying at the top level, and hopefully it'll mean that Laois progress and we come out of Division 4. We're in a really good place at the moment, but I just really enjoy playing for Laois, and I really enjoy competing at the highest level. And for as long as I'm able to do that, and people want me to do that and see me as an asset, then that's what I'll continue to give the time to.
And Ross, have you ever found it a problem, I suppose, like the horizon compared to when you first made your debut back in 2003 is obviously quite a lot different now in 2018. You started off your career, and 2003 we won Leinster. 2000 we had subsequent Leinster final appearances, and even at club level you've got to county championship finals and stuff, but the silverware has just kind of dried up, I suppose, the last couple of years. Is it something you found hard to motivate yourself going into your your 16th season?
No, never. And I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, one of the key selling points of the university is that we're innovative, and we equip graduates to constantly change and move and evolve and so on. And I've had to do that as a player as well, and that's a skill and that's why I probably change jobs so often as I have, because I embrace change. I don't mind it, and each different day brings a different challenge, and I certainly see sport as that as well. Not everybody can win the All-Ireland, not everyone can win the Leinster Championship or the leagues, but that doesn't mean just because you can't win it, just because you're not in a position to win it, or you don't win it, or you haven't won it, for me that's not a reason to stop and say, well, actually maybe that's not a strong possibility, therefore it's not worth my time. I think the opposite. How is Laois going to get back to sitting at the top table and competing in the very best games? It means that all the players who are chosen, selected, and who have what it takes to be a top player, it's that everyone pulls together and that everyone tries to take Laois in that direction. And for me, there's no, what more motivation would I need? It's our county. You mentioned your connections with Knockbeg. In years to come, you'll mention your connections with DCU. I've always been big on developing DCU people, and if you're passionate about something, and if you believe in something and you feel part of something, then you'll want that, whether it's your employers, your family, your club, your county, whatever it is, you'll want the very best for that particular area. And I'm no different when it comes to Laois. So I've always said, bring on the challenge, and each year you learn something. Even if you're not winning games, you're learning something, and eventually, when you have the right system in place and everyone is winning their own individual battles, and the team is starting to win games and so on, and you start seeing a change, getting momentum behind the setup, then anything is possible. So we'll keep pushing in that direction. And if you look at all of the top sports people in the world and so on, at some particular point in time, it probably looked like they maybe weren't going to make it, but you have to, as an individual, and I'm open this up, it doesn't have to be sport, it can be the most successful people in business and education and STEM and all the rest and research. At some point in time, you have to back yourself and say, I want to try and achieve something, and thankfully there's so many opportunities to do that across all aspects of life.
Great.
Right, I think we're coming close to the end of the show, but I think we have a quick quiz on the GAA.
It's just a very broad kind of general GAA quiz, just a bit of fun
to test your bit of knowledge. You've been a character in the GAA for a while now.
We do hope there's one or two things in this. GAA statistics they're a bit hard to nail down. Okay. So I'm fingers crossed on this one. Firstly, Ross, Fratherfield is located in which county?
Fratherfield. It's Munster, I think.
Okay, you're on the right track.
Kerry, Cork?
No, over here, Ross. Waterford.
Yeah. There you go.
Okay, we'll let you away with that one.
Guilty.
How many championship goals have you scored?
I've no idea.
No idea. Well, see, this is
where the statistics come in. So the GAA website isn't extremely helpful as far as statistics go. No. So we had to.
It was a lot of Google.
Yeah,
a lot of Google.
We had to outsource. We found a website that has been tracking GAA championship statistics since 2001. So it says there that you have 7. Does that number seem right to you?
It probably is.
Yeah.
Probably is.
Yeah, well,
we'll round it up to 20 or 20.
Yeah. Well, 170 points to match it, so that's certainly a high number.
That's not too bad.
Who went on to win the All-Ireland in 2003?
Tyrone.
Yeah.
To beat us in the league final.
They did. That was actually my first Laois game in Croke Park.
Oh, was it? Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember the game, but it was pissing rain. And it was miserable, and we were down at the very front of the stand, and we got absolutely soaked, and we got a lovely bus back to Ballyrone after.
Yeah, I came on at half time. That match I came on, Mark and Devlin from Tyrone. Actually, he's now a selector with Mickey Hart. So I met him at a game last summer. So we were slagging about that league final. But yeah, I remember it well.
Very good. If there was a transfer system in the GAA, what player from which county would you draft in?
There's not. And for that reason, I respect all my teammates. So for all the Laois players that we have playing, I wouldn't swap any of them at the moment. We're working towards improving the county, improving our own performances, and I've full faith in everyone that we have in the group.
Great, and I'm sure John and the crew in the panel will be very delighted to hear that. When was the last time Laois beat Dublin in the championship?
That was 2004.
Yes, that is right.
There was no Hill 16 open that day.
Back in them times, no. Who did you make your championship debut against and where?
Championship debut was Wexford in Croke Park. Yeah, and then we had the 2 games against Offaly.
Yeah,
because normally you go to home ground first and then Croke Park, but no, our first game was in Croke Park. Remembered well. And my 50th championship game was against Wexford.
And your 70th will be against
Please
Wexford.
God.
Please God, fingers crossed. Ross, do you have any pre-game superstitions?
When I was younger, I probably did. You get, and this is the kind of thing I was saying earlier on. You get sometimes you can get fixated on preparation and so on. Whereas now I don't. I just believe in my performances, believe in my preparation. And actually I took a lot from Laois ran a training camp one year under Justin McNulty, and we had a guest speaker from Munster Rugby, and one of the lads was Jerry Flannery, and he was saying that each day of the week coming up to a big game, he used to have his routine for practicing the basic skills. And again, I'm coming back to basic skills. And it used to be for him, it could be line out, it could be scrum, it could be pass, it could be tackle. And each day he did a little bit on everything. And by the time his last training session was finished, his head was clear, he was ready for the game. So since then I've adapted an approach similar to that. So no pre-game rituals, but just believe in getting my preparation right. Okay. And when the final training session is over, it's from that point in time, it's all about enjoying the game and getting the performance.
Great. And Ross, your toughest opponent over the years, if you had to maybe just one off the top of your head?
Toughest opponent would be Aidan Fennelly.
Portlaois's own.
Yeah.
That was from obviously your earlier years. Was he someone that you were Miko threw you in on top of to prepare you?
Yeah, we obviously marked each other in training. I marked him against Portlaois as well. I think I read at one point in time Niall McNamee had highlighted him as his toughest ever opponent.
And Bernard Brogan named Kerr Healy a couple of years back as well.
Yeah, so I always look inside the county. Aidan Fennelly is a good friend of mine still. We had our battles on the field, and obviously each of you is trying to be ruthless and trying to win, but we've always been brilliant friends off it. And so yeah, Fenno gets the nod.
And Ross, do you have a favourite piece of memorabilia from over the years?
Sports memorabilia. I have a number of things. I pretty much have all of my championship jerseys.
Very good.
At home under lock and key.
Was the one from the weekend one added with any bit of, I suppose, added notoriety?
The London?
Laois's first competitive game.
No, because you don't get to keep the league jerseys.
The league jerseys.
So it's the championship jersey. I've only swapped a handful of them over the years. The first one I ever swapped was with Sean Marty Lockhart.
Okay.
Because I played with him at international rules, and I would have been in the back garden at some point. That great Derry team would have been pretending to be him, and I really admire his approach. And I would have swapped. I've obviously swapped with a couple of friends that I've played against over the years, but I'd say of the 70 championship jerseys, 69 of them, I probably have about 60 of them at home.
Wow, right. And Ross, just to finish up, firstly I'd like to thank you very much for coming on today. We've thoroughly enjoyed it. I think we actually got a tip during the week. We were in search of new guests, and we got a tip from a lecturer here in DCU that we should contact the alumni officer.
Yep.
And I think we're going to certainly pursue that.
So what you're saying is you're putting me on the spot live on air now to make sure that I deliver and get you graduates to come on the show.
Interview recruitment officer.
Yeah, well, exactly.
I've no other choice but to say yes. The alumni office will be delighted to facilitate that, and yeah, happy to do so. Perfect. And we've so many really good graduates. And my last point on that is that we've so many graduates who are hugely keen to give back to the university by coming in, helping people like yourselves, helping clubs and societies, guiding, mentoring students. So I'm more than happy to facilitate that.
Great. And we're going to finish up on this, Ross. One final question for you. Who gave you the pass for that goal in 2003 in the Leinster final?
The one and only Bino.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, this is DCU FM's In Conversation With. My name is Greg. I'm joined by my co-hosts Gavin Kelly and Colin MacDonald, and our lovely guest Ross Munnelly. Thank you very much for listening, and goodbye.